Hi, this is Doug from Dynamic Computing. Welcome to episode 20 of 10 Minute Amiga Retro Cast. This episode's all about an A500 that I found on eBay. Now, first of all, most importantly, check out what my boy got me for Christmas. I mean, seriously, do I have a good son or what? Nice Amiga checkmark logo? I think it's kind of nice. So thank you, Daniel, for my wonderful gift. I do appreciate it. So a couple of weeks back, I'm on eBay, and I noticed an Amiga 500 for sale. Looked like it was in pretty good condition, and so I start to bid on it, and before I know it, the bidding gets up and up and up and up and up around $160, $170, and I miss out on that one. But in the meantime, I am chatting with the seller a little bit. She's somebody I've bought from before, and she sends me a message a couple days later. She's like, "Hey Doug, I found another Amiga 500 in storage. I'll put it up for sale. I'll put a buy it now price on it for what you wanted to pay for it originally, and grab it." Okay, so I did. Now, this Amiga was sight unseen. She sent me one picture of it, and she had booted it up. It had the Kickstart disc on there, the Kickstart disc on there, so I knew the Amiga at least worked, but I don't know what kind of condition it was going to be in. But it was a fairly reasonable price, so I took a risk, got it in. The thing is in perfect shape, beautiful physical condition, not a scratch, not too dirty, and physically everything about it looked pretty darn good. But I booted it up and it had some issues. Number one, the keyboard had some issues and wouldn't work properly. The series of keys right in the center would give you duplicate letters when you typed on them. So you'd say type a G, and it would type F, and then it would type G, and if you held it down, it would repeat G. Then the next set of keys, like the Y, H, and N, nothing at all. And the next set of keys also had duplicates. So I thought, oh, no problem. We'll get a new membrane for it. They're cheap. Well, it's one of the original style, the older style, that has two membranes. And you'll see a picture of it here in a little while. But it actually has two membranes on it touching each other, and two different membrane connectors. Well, you can't get those membranes. I looked all over. You can't get the membranes. You can only get the single membrane connector. So had to order in a new keyboard from eBay from another seller. No problem at all. But, there goes the price. A little bit higher. But then I thought, you know what? I'm just going to refurbish this thing from the ground up and make it as slick as I possibly can. And here's what I did. This is the new Amiga 500 that just came in. Now, this little guy came with a nice little Supra 512K card. And luckily, it has a standard 2032 battery on it that has no signs of any leakage at all. It doesn't have one of our evil Varta batteries on it. I will be changing this one, but I'm going to have to desolder it to get the battery out of there and change it to a new one. Got some nice fresh ones. Looks like it's in good shape. The inside of the computer, you see the RF shielding is terribly nasty. It's got a lot of rust and a lot of corrosion. Now, I know we don't really need these RF shields. I might clean it up. I might reuse it. I might spray paint it silver and put it back in. We'll see how it all goes along. Now, inside here, it's all pretty traditional. Just our regular onboard 512K of RAM. This is a revision 5 motherboard, so it is one of the slightly earlier ones. Mine, I think, is a 6A on my other Amiga. Just has the standard 68,000 in it, nothing special. Looks like we got something jury-rigged here. Standard, I think that's just a regular 512K Agnes, and all of the standard custom chips. It's actually fairly clean, except for a little bit of corrosion. that I'll clean up. So I'm pretty happy with that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap out this 512K Agnes for my 1 megabyte Agnes from my old A500. If you recall, I've mentioned before that I upgraded that to a 2 meg chip. I've got a mega chip on my other A500, but I'll upgrade this one to a full 1 meg, and I'm going to have to cut some traces and maybe do a little soldering work here, but I'll document that too, and we will clean this little guy up. I'm also going to clean up the case and the keys and the keyboard, and I may just take my first stab at retrobriting too. First thing I want to do with the cleaning is to hit everything with some nice compressed air. Now, a lot of people use the cans of compressed air, but that gets expensive very quickly having to replace that. So I just have a nice air compressor that I use. I also use it to fill the air in my tires. And we'll just clean everything up. The plastic on the cases always gets dust accumulated inside, and this will help just get all the yuck off there before we scrub it down. The high pressure will also help get out the built-in dirt that's stuck inside the grills. Using this on the keyboard won't replace taking the keycaps off and cleaning things individually, but it will go a long way to getting a lot of the gunk out. You can see the keyboard is pretty nastily yellowed on here. Not horrible, not the worst I've ever seen, and maybe not even as bad as my regular Amiga 500, but it certainly could use some good scrubbing. The board actually looks pretty good. I mean, all things considered, it's fairly clean, but I do want to get in there and get off some of the oxidation that's on here and some of the built-on crud, and I'll just use some isopropyl alcohol to clean that off. Now what I want to do here is clean up the case itself just with some nice dish soap and hot water and a good sponge to get off everything that I can get off. But I want to try and protect the little Commodore logo here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a piece of cling wrap cut down to size over there and then tape that on there to hopefully protect the sticker. We'll see how it works. Well, we've got the sticker with a piece of plastic over it and then taped down to keep that water resistant. And I of course use the plastic instead of just putting tape over it, because you then peel the tape off and it'd rip the sticker right off. So let's get to cleaning. Now of course I do think a good retrobrite will do wonders for this too, but I'm real curious to see how it looks after just a good thorough scrubbing with hot water and soap. There's a lot of gook that always seems to accumulate on these little rubber feet, but luckily it seems to come right off with the soap and water. Now if perchance the little rubber feet come off, I'll just replace them with some other alternatives. And this is getting a lot of the yuck off of here for sure. Get the insides too, because they get filthy. And then onto the top cover, which is very dirty. Now, the metal shielding is really nasty, and I'm really debating on whether I want to even reuse it, but I'm going to try scrubbing it up, see if I can just get the worst of the corrosion off of here. Time to bust out the heavy artillery here. Got a nice wire brush. We're going to get to work on this. There's some, it did do an okay job of getting off a lot of the superficial rust, but this should get a lot more of it off. The bottom RF shield, which does need to go back on because it holds all the little connectors in place, is also a little yucky. So I want to clean that up. Give them a good final rinse down, get the soap off of them. And the label seemed to have survived intact, so I'm happy with that. Now for the motherboard itself, it's actually fairly clean. So I'm going to give it a nice little scrub down with some isopropyl alcohol. And got some nice fine soft wire brushes here that I use to kind of clean out where the chips are there. I may pop out the chips. Yeah, I think I'm going to pop out the chips and clean them and reseat them too. We just want to make sure that everything's nice and clean and dust-free, contaminant-free. Now, do yourself a favor and get the appropriate chip pullers before you start yanking chips out of any of your retro computers. This is for pulling out chips like Agnes here, and these are for pulling out traditional chips. So it just makes life much easier than trying to do it with a screwdriver, and much safer. See? They just pop right out. So we've got our new 8372A fat Agnes in there that'll address 1 megabyte of chip RAM. Took that out of my old Amiga 500. And we have to do two quick little mods. One of them here is to JP2. There's no jumper on here, so what we have to do, we have to cut an itsy bitsy little trace. Excuse me 1 second. Can I help you? Something I can do for you? You're noisy. So, like I was saying, we have to cut a trace here on JP2 and then jumper it there with just a little dollop of solder, just nothing at all, just a little piece of solder right there. Cut that trace. And over here, there is that trace that goes up here that basically also needs to be cut in order to have the system address the expansion RAM in here as a full 1 megabyte of RAM. So I'm going to go ahead and do those mods real quick. The floppy drive was also very yucky. We had a lot of corrosion right down here, but it just seemed superficial. Now I did try it out, and it does actually read disks, and it booted, but I do want to lubricate the little motor here, and I want to clean off the little heads there, give that a nice shiny new appearance, and I'm also cleaning the outside of the floppy case. It actually cleaned up quite nicely. Everything is bright and shiny and new, and even the case looks pretty darn good. I'm not seeing a whole lot of yellowing on there. The keyboard's improved too. Let me flip that over. Not perfect, but certainly better after a good thorough cleaning. Got all the crud out of the keys. Now we're going to put it back together, make sure it works okay. And we finished that mod to give it 1 megabyte of chip RAM instead of 512K. I also want to make sure that the power supply that came along with it is in good condition. So I'm going to take it apart, do a visual and other inspection. I'm going to check the voltages on it, make sure all the voltages are nice and clean. Now, my personal opinion is that Amiga 500 power supplies tend to be really reliable. I've got 2 of them that are over 30 years old. Yeah, about 30 years old. And they're just continue working just fine. So this one's probably fine too, but I'm going to clean it up, take it apart, and see what we've got. I had to order a new keyboard for this new Amiga. The original one was a 2-connection keyboard here, so it had 2 actual physical connections for the membrane, and the plastic membrane inside is actually 2 membranes, one sitting on top of the other. And the symptom was that this set of keys, you'd push it down and it would type a D and then it would type Fs. This set of keys was dead. This set of keys would type like a J and then type H's. And there was nothing I could do. I cleaned the membrane, tested it, cleaned all the chips, removed that one had a removable 6570 chip, so I removed it, cleaned it. It looked a little bit tarnished, but I couldn't find another socketed version. So what I did is I just ordered another keyboard off of eBay, and it was one of them that was tested good, and it had a single connector here. So this is effectively a brand new old keyboard, and it works perfect on the Amiga 500. But what's really kind of disappointing me is the RF shield. I want to keep the RF shield intact, but it just looks like garbage. It looks like it's rusty. I cleaned this thing off as best I could, but what's happened is all of the coating has just literally flaked off over the years because of oxidation and whatnot, and it just doesn't look very good. So I am going to fix that. So I picked up this can of Ace Chrome Aluminum Paint. It's on sale for $3 a can. So we're going to check it out and see how this does at bringing back the beauty of our RF shield. Now before I sprayed it, I took a Dremel tool to it and I cleaned off all of the rust. There was rust and oxidation on the top that was leaving some bumpiness on there, so I cleaned all that off. I have to say that looks pretty darn good. Let that dry for a little bit. I'm going to flip it over and do the other side. I would have to say that looks substantially better. With that nice aluminum chrome paint on there. No more signs of any oxidation. And the floppy. I did some additional testing on the floppy, and I was getting occasional errors on the floppy drive. So I'm going to be replacing the floppy drive with a known working one, seeing if I can get that to work okay in there. And now we're going to get the thing put back together. So after everything's said and done, the computer works like an absolute dream. I have not had any other issues with the floppy drive giving me errors, and everything I seem to throw at it seems to work out just fine. Audio works great. Let's test out the audio here too. So keyboard is working absolutely fine. XYZ. But the keyboard works absolutely fine. Let's test the audio.
Hello, man.
Audio works just fine, so Paula chip is exactly doing what it's supposed to do. Now, the 8372A Agnes chip that I put in here and I did the hardware mods. I have to cut up the jumper like I explained, and cut a trace near the expansion port. Makes it see 1 megabyte of chip memory, of which we've got about 800K free. That's always nice to have 1 full megabyte of chip memory. It makes a huge difference, especially if this is upgraded to, say, Amiga OS 3.1.4. That 1 mega chip memory is going to make a huge difference. And I think overall, she's a very handsome looking system. I think she doesn't need any retrobrighting at all. Even the keyboard's fairly clean. Case, not particularly yellowed at all. The cleanup I did sure did improve it. The mouse is in perfect condition. Happy with the mouse. And the power supply. Now I'm using my Commodore Forever power supply right there, but I have tested it thoroughly with the existing power supply, as you saw, and that works great. So overall, I am happy and content with how this project worked out. Now, I'm very pleased with how it turned out. I did do a couple of additional things to it that I didn't necessarily mention in the video. Number one, I replaced one of the CIA chips, but I don't think there was anything wrong with it. It turns out the floppy drive was flaky. When I first booted it, floppy drive worked fine, everything worked fine. A couple hours into testing it, it started telling me I couldn't read the discs have errors. Well, could be bad floppies, but I checked them out, they were fine. So bad floppy drive. So I replaced the floppy drive with a known good one. But the issue is that the eject button didn't line up with the Amiga 500. So you have to kind of poke it with something to eject the disk, but it's not the end of the world. I mean, who uses floppies that much anymore? And probably what's going to end up happening is this thing's going to get an internal Gotek drive anyways, no big deal. So the floppy's not perfect. I did test it with my ACA 500 Plus. Initially, I had an issue with it not being recognized, not working properly. I sent a message off to Jens on his forums, and he says make sure you clean the contacts on the expansion bay. And I'm thinking, I already did that. It's one of the first things I did when I started redoing the machine is clean the contacts. But okay, I'll do it again. Went in there, Q-tip, some isopropyl alcohol, cleaned the contacts. The whole time thinking, this isn't going to work. I've already cleaned the contacts. Plugged the A500 Plus in, boom, cracks off, worked perfect. So he was absolutely right. I must have just missed something on cleaning, or I didn't quite scrub hard enough. There's a piece of crud on there, cleaned it right up. So all in all, I'm very happy with how it worked out. I think everything about it works perfect. The 1 megabyte of chip RAM is a fantastic upgrade for this little guy. It's going to work with almost anything you throw at it with WHD load. If you decide to go that route or decide to go with the Gotek drive in it, it's going to work with everything just perfectly. So I'm fairly content with how this project worked out. Thanks for watching this week's episode. I do appreciate it. Please don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. Please comment anything you want to do. Love to chat with everybody on the site. And until next week, this is Doug from 10 Minute Amiga Retro Cast, signing out.